Dr. Samantha Keller discovers that the military has weaponized the mind bridge, an alien telepathic technology given by the Zephyrians to foster interspecies understanding. Colonel Thorne and her colleague, Dr. Elena Vasquez, are using psychiatric patients to extract trauma patterns and broadcast them as psychological warfare through the Unity web. When Ambassador Zethkar reveals this contamination threatens the entire galactic network of consciousness, Samantha rebels against the project. She convinces Elena and eventually Thorne to help her purify the network by broadcasting healing experiences instead of trauma. Through the mind bridge, they share love, compassion, and positive emotions to counteract the weaponized suffering. The healing process not only saves the Unity web, but transforms the psychiatric patients, turning the technology into a tool for therapy, diplomacy, and consciousness evolution rather than warfare. Dr. Samantha Keller placed her palm onto the chilled metal plating surrounding the console of the mind bridge, noting how the device hummed to life beneath her hand. There was a kind of vibration or hum, barely audible and almost melodic, sort of hummed through Anna's bones while she worked. The Zephyrians had come to Earth 3 years before, bringing humanity their awe-inspiring gift, a telepathic network allowing minds to reach out across galaxies. The Unity web, they said, was supposed to usher in a new era of interspecies understanding. What they didn't realize was that Colonel Marcus Thorne had other ideas. The subjects are prepared for the next stage, announced Dr. Elena Vasquez, as she emerged, tablet full of readings in hand, cutting through the background hum. Elena had been Samantha's research partner since they'd started the Mind Bridge project. But recently something had altered in her disposition. There was a certain steeliness in her eyes that wasn't present before. Samantha drew her hand from the console and looked at the main readout. The mind bridge loomed in the middle of the laboratory, like a metal tree, its limbs rising to the ceiling in alien, rounded curves that appeared lit from within. The Zephyrians had told them that this technology had been honed by their ancestors, for countless eons, circulating all of the knowledge, emotions, and experiences for the whole of their civilization. No one was ever really alone, they said. Every joy was doubled, every grief divided. The volunteers from the mental ward. Didn't you? Samantha asked, although she knew he did. The so-called volunteers were not volunteering for anything. They were patients with history of severe abuse, identified for their psychological profiles. PTSD, severe anxiety disorders, major depressive episodes, Elena said on her tablet. Colonel Thorne says their neural maps are the best one we've got to go with in order to make these experiments in actual transmission. Suddenly, Samantha had the wind coming out of her sails. When she first signed on to work the Mindbridge project, she'd been told they were testing the technology to help humans connect to the Zephyrian Unity web. I mean the prospect of curing mental illness, of permitting people to share not just recovery, but positive emotions too, had always felt boundless. But somewhere along the process, the military had seized control of the research. Elena, we need to discuss what we're doing here, Samantha said, moving back from the console. This is not what we signed up for. Elena's expression remained impassive. We are pushing the frontier of human understanding of consciousness. The applications are revolutionary. The apps are weaponizing trauma. Samantha shot back. We're taking people's worst memories and we're figuring out how to broadcast them directly into other people's thoughts. This is torture. Elena, psychological warfare. It needs to be done, Elena said finally, without warmth in her voice. The world isn't the peaceful planet that the Zephyrians think it is. We have foes who would turn this technology on us if they could, and that we need to explore its full potential before that occurs. Samantha looked at her friend and saw a stranger. Listen to yourself. You're talking about weaponizing the loveliest gift that humans have ever been given. The Zephyrians gave us unity, the power to connect, the opportunity to actually know one another, and we're militarizing it. The Zephyrians are fools, Alina said brusquely. They have not lived through the kind of wars we have. They don't realize that force is sometimes necessary to preserve peace. Before Samantha could reply, the lab door hissed open and Colonel Thorne stepped in. Just as ramrod straight and authoritative despite the casual attire. Behind him came Ambassador Zethkar, the Zephyrian advisor who had been with the human research team. The alien was lean and long, with a smooth, sinuous grace that belonged in water, and his large silver eyes missed nothing, filled with a degree of intelligence and possibly even compassion that transcended the ages. You too, Dr. Keller, Dr. Vasquez, Thorne acknowledged. Ambassador Zethkar has a few concerns about our research protocols. I just figured you could help solve them. Zethkar made a move closer, his spidery fingers interlacing in front of him the sign she'd found for him being stressed out among his kind. Dr. Keller, I've been observing the Unity weblogs from your location. The overtones I'm getting are ... awful. The purpose behind the mind bridge is to spread the joy, knowledge, and healing God has given her. I mean, whatever I'm feeling is like an intentional broadcasting of suffering. Samantha felt her heart racing. Here was someone who knew what was really going on, who cut through the euphemisms of the military's sanitized language. Mr. Ambassador, I've been trying to tell my colleagues that perhaps we've lost sight of the original purpose of the inquiry. There's no need to explain, Thorne broke in. We are pushing what the technology is capable of. The ambassador's people have been living a tranquil existence for centuries. They do not quite comprehend the circumstances of the geopolitical earth. Zethkar's silver eyes appeared to flicker out. Colonel Thorne, the mind bridge is not a weapon. It is a gift intended to foster understanding between our two peoples. Use it to create trauma and fear, and you will delete the very soul of connection. With all due respect, Mr. Ambassador Thorne answered, and by all due respect, you could tell that he meant not a damned bit. Humanity's managed to avoid extermination for thousands of years. We know that the threat of retribution is all that keeps the world at peace. If our enemies know we can look into their every thought process clear in their brains, they will hesitate before attacking us. You talk of enemies, Zeth sighed, but you are making them. The web of unity that all minds are. When you emit trauma with the mind bridge, it's not only your targets who are endangered. You affect everyone in that network, including yourselves. Samantha observed the dialogue with increasing trepidation. She knew going in that the military applications were suspect, but now she was starting to realize that the scale of what they were doing was so much worse than what she had thought. Show me, she said suddenly. Show me what we're transmitting on the dot. Alina hesitated. Sam, the data is classified. You don't have clearance for. I'm the head researcher on this, Samantha snapped. I have clearance for everything. Show me. Thorne's jaw tightened. Dr. Keller, I believe you should hear this on a one-on-one basis. No, Samantha said firmly. If you are going to employ the mind bridge as a weapon here at Bonnyhaven, I want to know exactly how it is being used. And I would have Ambassador Zethkar know that, too. Alina glanced at Thorne, who made the faintest of nods. Alina sighed and booted up another console. set of neural pattern displays appearing on the screen. The fundamental trauma. Signatures we have extracted from the volunteer subjects. Combat, PTSD, survivor's guilt, panic disorder, clinical depression. We learned to distill the fundamental emotional resonances of that content and supercharge them for transmission. The information filled the screen, and Samantha felt sick. She could see the wavefronts of pure agony, the neural configurations of hopelessness and terror, daubed in cold and clinical detail. This is somebody's nightmare, she breathed up the line. You've taken their pain and made a weapon from it. A non-lethal weapon, Thorne corrected. We're not killing anyone. We're incapacitating them psychologically. It's melting. Their minds, Zethkar whispered, his voice horrified. This is not incapacitation. This is soul murder. There is some real truth. The ambassador is being overly dramatic, Alina said. The effects are temporary. The targets regenerate over hours or days. The exact timescale depending on the strength of the broadcast. We know that cows show sound spatial behavior, but the scar remains, Zethkar said. When you force someone to endure that kind of pain, they carry it for the rest of their lives. You are not merely weaponizing the mind bridge. You are creating the trauma you yourself are broadcasting. It is a never-ending cycle of suffering. Samantha looked at the data, pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place. The psych ward volunteers. They're not just giving you baseline data, are they? You're connecting them, using the mind bridge to exaggerate their trauma, and then beaming it back to them to create even more intensive ripples. It's research. It's in constant need of refining, Alina defended. We cannot do enough to understand what all of the different trauma signatures are coupling with certain psychological profiles. You're torturing people. Samantha managed to keep her voice steady. You're using injured people to injure them more, to become perfect at injuring other people. They are doing a service for their country, Thorne said. Their sacrifice will save untold lives. Their sacrifice? Samantha's voice. Rose, they didn't give up anything. They are psychiatric patients, unable to give informed consent to this sort of experimentation. This is an affront to all ethical values of medicine and science. We can't afford ethics, Thorne said, and did so coldly. The Chinese are already on their way to creating their own consciousness manipulation technology. For decades, Russians have been tinkering with psychic warfare. Either we develop these technologies ourselves, or we remain vulnerable to them. Going closer to the console, Zethkar eclipsed the displays with his towering figure. Colonel, you talk about defense, but this is offensive technology. When you send trauma out over the Unity web, it's contagious. It reaches every brain on the network. Your foes will suffer, yes, but so will your friends. So will innocent civilians. So will your own people. No, that's just not how it plays out, Alina countered. We've developed targeting protocols. We can tailor the broadcast on exact neural signatures, exact people. No, Zethkar said firmly. You cannot. The Unity web is not a signal that can be directed. It's a live network of consciousness. And then, when you put a trauma in it, that trauma becomes part of the network. It's contagious, like a virus, that spreads and contaminates every mind it touches. Samantha's face turned white as blood drained from it. Alina, is this true? Do we just be polluting the whole network? Alina's hesitation was answer enough. There's probably going to be some spillover impact, but we are working on containment protocols. There are no containment procedures for the mind, Zethkar responded. When you're polluting the unity web with trauma, you're polluting the shared experience of every single being in relation to it. You're not just weaponizing the mind bridge, you're weaponizing the entire idea of shared consciousness. Then perhaps that's exactly what we need to do, Thorne said. Perhaps the idea of shared consciousness is simply too dangerous to survive. The words hung in the air like a punch. Samantha looked at the colonel, and all at once she saw the end of his project. It wasn't just that he intended to turn the mind bridge into a weapon. He intended to bring down the unity web. You want to lead to the poisoning of the network, she said slowly. You want to make it so that there's enough trauma and pain in using this thing that somebody can't use it. You want to destroy the gift the Zephyrians left us. I want to counteract a strategic threat, Thorne answered. If we can't have the technology, then no one should. The web of unity has stood for 10,000 years, said Zethkar, his voice pained. It links billions of brains, stretching over dozens of star systems. It is what provides the foundation of our civilization, our art, our science, our very identity as human. You cannot break it without breaking us. Maybe you should have thought of that before you handed your technology over to us, Thorne said. Like you thought we were going to go in there holding hands and singing songs. This is Earth, Ambassador. This is humanity. We weaponize everything in the end. Samantha's mind raced. The horror of what they were doing was becoming explicit. They weren't just playing games with consciousness manipulation. They were probably going to commit genocide on a massive scale across the galaxy. Their trauma would be broadcast through the mind bridge and spread through the unity web, poisoning the collective consciousness of an entire species. This is something we have to end, she added. Right now, we'll have to stop the project and clean the network so we're not introducing this contamination. That's not for you. Don't make that decision, Thorne said. You're a researcher, Dr. Keller. I am the commander of this project. And I say we continue. Then I quit, Samantha said. I won't be part of this. Can't do that, Thorne said. When you got into this project, you agreed to a security agreement. You know too much about top secret defense technology to be able to just walk away. Samantha's blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts, Thorne said. You are a national security asset now. With what to punish someone who knew all of the consciousness manipulation technology to be retained and life to be sustained, would be too dangerous to allow to leave. Zethkar stepped away from the hold, putting himself between Samantha and the Colonel. Colonel Thorne, Dr. Keller, is a member of the Combined Research Project and is therefore under my protection. Our peoples have made agreements that ensure her safety. Your deals do not take precedence over American national security, Thorne responded. And to be perfectly honest, Ambassador, I'm starting to wonder if your people can be trusted with that tech either. You say we can't be trusted. Friends, I can hardly believe it. Zethkar's voice was still, tinged with disbelief. And we gave you freely our best gift to save our species. You have transformed it into an instrument of torture and genocide. Because it's what it is, Thorne said. So you really thought we'd miss the implications? A weapon that can go straight into people's minds, can broadcast terror and trauma with perfect accuracy. It was the same as taking a nuclear weapon, giving it to us, and being shocked when I don't know, if made small and light, then how are we going to use it for military purposes? The mind bridge is no weapon, Zep protested. It is a communication, for knowledge, for communion, the entirety of being human and conscious with another human. Yes, it can share negative emotions, but only because negative emotions are included in the totality of consciousness. It was, from the beginning, not meant to be used to cause suffering. Intent doesn't matter, Thorn replied. Capability does. And mankind has the technological ability to make this tool the single worst weapon in human history. If we don't build it, somebody will build it. Alina, who had kept quiet so far, finally added her piece. Colonel, maybe we need to be thinking about what the ambassador is saying. If the network contamination is as bad as he says it is, we could be doing more harm than good. Thorn's eyes narrowed. Are you reconsidering the project, Dr. Vasquez? Having second thoughts about the methodology, Alina answered cautiously. If we're going to weaponize consciousness, we should at least know what the hell we're doing full on, he said. It's very simple consequences, Thorn said. We developed that technology before our enemies, or else we may encounter it used against us. There are no other considerations. Samantha tensed the more on hearing the conversation. She could tell that Alina was starting to soften, but Thorn was digging in deeper now, and somewhere inside the complex, the insane patients were still plugged into the mind bridge, their pain siphoned and used to drive the war to new blood-spattered heights. What about the volunteers? She asked. The individuals who we are using as test subjects, do they have no agency over what is happening here? They are serving their country, Thorn answered. Just like soldiers who go out in the field and risk their lives. Soldiers choose. They embrace service. Samantha shot back. These are psychiatric patients who do not have the capacity to provide informed consent. They don't know what we're doing to them. They're crazy, Thorn said, dismissively. They don't have the capacity to make rational decisions with respect to national security. They are human beings, Samantha fumed. They have rights, dignity, the simple expectation that medical professionals won't take their suffering and use it as raw material to develop weapons. Their rights can be trumped by the public interest, Thorn responded. At times, individual sacrifice is necessary for the security of the collective. The silver eyes of Zethkar appeared to be lit from within. Colonel, you talk about sacrifice, but you have no idea what you are sacrificing. The Unity Web is not simply a system of communications. It is the platform for conscious evolution. When beings communicated their experiences directly, they evolved in wisdom, compassion, and understanding. It's built on top of the talent and the passion of those who have come before us, and they weigh that we all take that material and make something of it, taking it somewhere else and adding to it. That's how the thing builds. That's how we build off of it, more than we are apart from it. They become vulnerable, Thorn countered. Invite other people into your life and you lose privacy and freedom of action. Mental contamination, mind fought. Perk, the Unity Web enables it all. If you so use it, Zethkar replied. For millions of years, our people have used the Unity Web to communicate knowledge, beauty, love, and healing. We have never had anything like the conscious psychological warfare you are waging on us. You just never had to, Thorn said. None of you ever fought enemies who could turn your gift against you. But humans are different. We have been killing ourselves since the beginning of our history. We know how to make a weapon out of anything. A light bulb went off for Samantha. What if we didn't? Thorn and Zethkar both looked at her. What do you mean? Elena asked. What if we tried to mind bridge in the way it is supposed to be done? Samantha said, what if we broadcast out understanding instead of broadcasting trauma? What if we deployed it to teach people to feel for the other person, to feel, to know intimately what it must be like to be their supposed enemies? That's an idealistic nonsense, Thorne sniffed. Geopolitical conflicts cannot be resolved by group therapy. Maybe not, Samantha replied, but you can't fix them with mental torture, either. Violence begets more violence, more trauma, more suffering, more cause for war. It's not about resolution, Thorne said. The goal is to win them by blowing the minds of all concerned. I wonder. Samantha asked, by fucking up the Unity web with so much trauma it's no longer usable. What kind of victory is this? A necessary one, Thorne replied. If we can't control technology, no one should have it. Zethkar stood once more, his long form exuding a sort of gentle command. Colonel, you are wrong in a basic sense. You take for granted that if a thing can be a weapon, expressed that way, it naturally should be. But the mind bridge is more than a technology. It is a living embodiment of consciousness. When you infuse it with trauma and fear, you're not just creating a weapon. You are despoiling intelligence and what it means to be aware, to think, to feel. Philosophy doesn't win wars, Thorne said. It does determine what kind of species you become, Zethkar answered. The decision you are making here will determine how human beings relate to consciousness for generations to come. You'd be a species that wields awareness as a weapon or a tool for something more. Samantha knew she was in the balance. She could watch the spreading branches of possibilities before them. Leading in one direction was the militarization of consciousness, the mental weaponization of the mind, and eventual contamination of the Unity web. Down the other lay the challenging but infinitely more promising route of employing the mind bridge to create true comprehension between species and beings. I know what I pick, she added. I choose understanding over warfare. I choose healing over weapons. And I will respect the gift that we've been given instead of trying to bastardize it. It doesn't matter what you would want, Thorne said coldly. You are a researcher, not a policymaker. You supply the technology. Others will decide how to take advantage of it. Then I'm not going to work, Samantha replied. I won't continue this research, not helping you turn human suffering into weapons. Dr. Keller, said Alina softly, reflect a moment on what you're saying. If you quit, they'll find someone else, Hassas explained, someone who may not have the same ethical challenges as you. Then perhaps I do need to ensure that the technology can't be used for weapon, Samantha said. Perhaps I should. Somehow remove the trauma from the network and once more turn the mind bridge to the purpose for which it was built. That would be treason, Thorne replied. Assault on a secret defense project. It would be healing, Samantha answered, putting a gift back to work. The silver eyes of Zethkar gazed back at her, and Telia felt a flicker of something hope, maybe, or recognition. Dr. Keller, if you refuse to stop there, I can assist you. The web of Unity has its own healing. If we can reach them, we can purify the network of the damage you have caused. Do not even think it, Thorne cautioned him. Those who will attempt to sabotage this project will be sabotaged. I'll have you both arrested. For what? Samantha asked. Of wanting to use the mind bridge as it was meant to be used. For declining to torture mental patients. For trying to mend rather than ruin. For threatening the Republic, Thorne said. For compromising classified defense technologies. For consorting with an enemy for the political advantage of the United States. The Zephyrians are not an outside power, Samantha said. They're an allied species that's trying to help us evolve from our destructive impulses. They're aliens with their own set of interests, Thorne replied, and their agenda may not be the same as human interests. Their purpose is evolution of consciousness, Zethkar added quietly. The spread of consciousness, knowledge, and empathy across the universe. Well, if that doesn't match the human interest, maybe humans need to vote their interest. Samantha's mind rang with the truth of the ambassador's statement. That decision was about more than the mind bridge or the unity web. It was about who human beings were going to be as a species. Would they be the kind of creatures who wielded their powers to create bonds of understanding, or who made a weapon out of everything at hand? I have made my decision, she said. I will assist Ambassador Zethkar in purging the network. I'm going to find a way to repurpose the mind bridge. Alina Thorne said to his other researcher, You have a choice to make, or you can use Dr. Keller's death as an excuse to circumvent her will and continue on, or follow her into treason. Alina glanced back and forth between Samantha and Thorne, draining color from her face as the import of the choice dawned on her. I got into research to help people, she said slowly, to push forward the boundaries of human knowledge and comprehension. I was never interested in creating weapons. Except you did make weapons, Thorne answered. You have helped create the most effective psychological warfare machine in the history of humankind. You don't just walk away from that. Maybe I can't, Alina said, but I can attempt to do something about it. She turned to Samantha. Tell me how to help. Samantha was instantly relieved and grateful. Zethkar, what must we do to purify the network? The ambassador crossed to the mind bridge console, described his fingers over the alien interface. The unity web does heal, but it's not attentionless healing. We need to flood the airwaves with healing experiences, positive emotions, intentional love, to counteract the trauma you have brought in. How do we do that? Alina asked. We use the same method you transmit trauma with, said Zethkar, but we amplify the positive instead of the negative. Joy, love, compassion, healing. All of these can be siphoned off and transmitted just as easily as trauma. That's not going to do it, Thorne said. Positive feelings just don't carry the same weight psychologically as negative ones do. Fear and trauma outweigh love and joy. That is the biggest load of horsepal there ever was, Zethkar answered. Nothing is stronger than love in the universe. It is the ground of consciousness. Fear and trauma appear to be stronger only because they are more readily accessible, to be figured, played on, but they are not stronger than love. They are just louder. Her bones recognized the reality of his statement. Every one of the healing experiences she had ever seen, every moment of true connection and understanding, had been made from love and compassion. The trauma-based weapons they had developed were effective, but they were ultimately self-destructive. They only perpetuated more suffering in the end. What do you need us to do? She asked. Link expansion, mind bridge, Zethkar relayed. Experience them with me as I lead you to open the door to your healing journeys. Instead, we will air those, not trauma. This is insane, Thorne said. You're going to scrap months of research and development. You're going to compromise the national security. We're going to save it, Samantha said. National security is not which country has the most powerful weapons. It is about building a world where weapons are irrelevant. She put her hand on the console of the mind bridge and felt the vibration of the alien technology she was used to. But this time, rather than concentrate on the streams of data and patterns of neural activity, she let herself apprehend the deeper point of the machine. Alina took her cue and added her hand to the console. I'm ready, she said. Zethkar started to lead them in the process. his voice almost lilting, and it felt like the mind bridge was singing to them. Really think about your most healing experiences, he added. Moments of real connection, of comprehension, of love. Feel them as experiences that can be shared, not just as memories. Samantha closed her eyes and allowed her mind to wander to her youth, to a time when she'd been ill with fever, and her grandmother had sat at her bedside crooning softly as she stroked her hair. As she basked in the warmth and love that emanated from him, she reflected that that was the only kind of love that there was, and there was no other word for it but perfect. She felt the fever subsiding, health and vigor returning, the mere joy of life and love. Elena's breaths grew deeper as she entered into her own regenerative memories. Through each one, the mind bridge revealed to Samantha what Elena was experiencing that instant of time when her daughter was born, when she first held that tiny perfect life and the peaceful years that followed, the incredible love, the magic, and motherhood, and this connection to something bigger than herself. And as they transmitted their experiences through the mind bridge, Samantha felt the network out there start to react. The trauma patterns inhabiting the unity web started to dissipate and were replaced by waves of restorative force. She felt other minds plugging into the network, lured by the good feelings being broadcast. It's functioning, Zethkar said, his voice tinged with awe. The network is in the process of automatically fixing itself. But then alarms blared across the laboratory. Red lights were already dancing, and further alarms went off as the automated security systems came to life. Dr. Keller, leave that console immediately, Thorne commanded, his voice again resonating throughout the complex. You are breaking national security protocols. Samantha opened her eyes and saw men in riot gear storming the lab. We're not through, she informed Zethkar. It's just going to take a little more time to heal. The damage you've inflicted upon the network is too great, Zethkar returned. It will not to be fully cleaned right away. But we've made a beginning. That's enough, Thorne said, following the guards into the laboratory. Dr. Keller, Dr. Vasquez, you are placed under arrest for sabotage of a classified defense project. You can put us under arrest, Samantha said, still not getting up from the console. But you can't stop what we have started. The network already knows how to heal itself. Every positive aspect of humanity that we've projected gives it the power to propagate and negate the misery you've spread. You'll see, Thorne answered. Guards, take them off the console. Zethkar took a step to place himself between the guards as they advanced. Colonel, you are making a terrible mistake. It's not over. Cleanup is not over. If you stop it now, you will be left with network in partially healed state. The trauma will never be fully exorcised, nor will the healing experiences. You'll do this J. Cratcher kind of psychological static that will make the unity web unworkable. For anything, perhaps that's the best answer, Thorne said. If we can't control the technology, then no one should have it. And the psychiatric patients you've been testing on, Samantha added, people are still connected to it. If you leave it half healing, they get stuck in limbo, unable to get into either the trauma story or the healing story. They will be lost in mental static. Thorne paused for the first time. Disconnect the volunteers from the network. They can't be, Zethkar said. You've extracted trauma patterns from them that are now embedded in their core identity. If you separate them now, while the network is unstable, it will split their minds apart. They will lose their minds forever. How long will it take you to heal this man? Thorne asked reluctantly. Several hours, Zethkar replied. Maybe more, depending on how corrupting the spread is. Thorn checked the readouts on the console, his expression serious. Psych patients are beginning to freak out. Their neural patterns are oscillating wildly. The reason? Because they're stuck between trauma and recovery, Samantha said. They need us to seal the deal. If we let up now, we'll leave them in a permanent psychological limbo. And if we do, we're going to screw the entire weapons development program, Thorn said. There doesn't need to be a weapons development program, Alina told me. We don't have to use the mind bridge to invade minds. We can use to heal, to understand, to unite. We could help people heal from trauma instead of weaponizing it. For a long moment, Thorn looked at the console readings and said nothing. Dr. Keller, if I permit you to finish your fiendish job of healing, can you promise the network will wipe all trace of trauma contamination? I can promise you that we will put it back to what it was, Samantha had responded. But the Unity web will not be for psychological warfare, and the military applications will be replaced by something better, Samantha said. Knowing your enemies is stronger than scaring them. Fear is not as powerful as empathy. Thorn looked at Ambassador Zefkar. Is she right? Is the mind bridge capable of establishing a rapport between enemies? Exactly what it was built for, Zefkar added. When beings communicate their experiences, they are understood by each other. All the hate and fear just goes away when real empathy is present. That's a lovely theory, Thorn said. But is this going to work in reality? Let us demonstrate, Samantha said. Plug into the mind, bridge yourself. Imagine what it's really like to know another mind. Thorn hesitated. I don't think that's advisable. Why not? Samantha asked. If the technology is safe enough to use in psychiatric patients, it is safe enough to use in consenting volunteers. I need to see files I drafted tonight. Because I have classified material, that's all. If I left them, anybody could get to them. May I see them? It is not using memories or information with MindBridge, Zefkar told. It shares experiences and emotions. Your secrets would be safe. But your bigotries may not be, Samantha added. It's difficult to hate someone or to be afraid of them, because when you really get what it's like to be that person, it's very difficult to feel disdain for them. Thorn glanced at the console, then at the readouts that reflected the distress of his psychiatric patients. How long would it take? A few minutes, Zefkar said. Long enough for you to feel true empathy. And then you decide, Samantha said. You choose whether this is the species that uses consciousness as a weapon or as a pathway to understanding. Thorn was silent for a long moment, weighing it all up. Finally, he approached the console. If this is a trick, if you attempt to control my mind or seek classified information, I will have both of you shot for treason, he added. We're not going to gaslight you, Samantha said. We're going to help you get it. Thorn touched the console, stiffening on the instant. Samantha could feel his mind expanding, spreading out into the edges of the Unity web, through the mind bridge. She felt his amazement as he fell into the huge web of linked minds, all open to letting their memories and emotions flow through the collective. Then she steered him to the healing experiences they'd been broadcasting. She allowed him to feel the love of grandmother for sick granddaughter, the elation of mother holding newborn child, the unspoken fulfillment of scientist opting to devote herself to a lifetime of helping others. She taught him what it was like to be seen, to be accepted, to be loved unconditionally, but she also exposed him to the trauma that was infecting the network. She introduced him to the sheer terror of combat PTSD, the overwhelming burden of survivor's guilt, the fathomless despair of clinical depression. She never did anything to you. She showed him the experience of being used as a test subject, as the victim of experiments into corpse-like state, as an awful boy soldier who had his very worst moments extracted and amplified and weaponized for a military she would never bother to understand. Thorne's hand shook on the console as he passed through every aspect of human consciousness, from glorious to appalling. He was in tune with the suffering of the psychiatric patients, with the anguish of being stuck inside loops of trauma and fear. But he also felt the force of the healing experiences, the ability of love and compassion to ease the deepest suffering. When he at last took his hand away from the console, there were tears in his eyes. "I didn't realize," he muttered. "I did not know what we were doing to them." "You do now," Samantha said softly. "And now you get why we have to finish the healing." Thorne re-examined the readouts with fresh eyes. The psychiatric patients, they're not abstract data points. They're people, they're suffering, they're human beings who should be helped along the healing process. They should not be made into commodities, Elena said. "We can help them, but not if we're abusing the mind bridge." "How long do you need?" Thorne asked. "For as long as it's needed," Samantha answered. "As long as it takes to heal the network and recharge the patients. And the weapons program will be replaced by something better," Samantha said. "A program to restore respect and empathy. A program of carving a place with, instead of from, consciousness." Thorne nodded slowly. "Do it. Complete the healing process. But I want everything you do all documented. If this pans out, if you can genuinely use the mind bridge to foster understanding among enemies, then we're going to have to scrap our entire model of how consciousness and information processing work." "It will work," Zethkar said. "Love of God is always stronger than fear of death. Knowledge is always better than hate." For the next 18 hours, Samantha, Alina, Zethkar, and Cassandra labored to mend the Unity web. From volunteers around the entire facility, they drew the positive experiences of joy, love, compassion, and healing into the mind bridge and spread the good news. Slowly but surely, the trauma-based pathways that were hijacking the network began to disappear. The first to improve were those who were psychotic. Their neural traces solidified as the healing experiences streamed in over the network. For the first time in months, they could access memories and feelings that didn't revolve around trauma and fear. They started to remember how it felt to be happy, to be loved, to be whole. Dr. Margaret Chen, one of the patients who had been experimented on, was the first to make coherent speech following the treatment. "I am feeling it," she said slowly, wonder infusing her voice. "I can feel the love. It's like soul after a long, dark winter." Another such patient, the former Marine Sergeant James Rodriguez, who had been chosen for his severe combat PTSD, sat up in his bed for the first time in weeks. "The nightmares are receding," he said. "I can still remember what happened in Afghanistan, but it doesn't quite feel like it's happening now." It's like she looks away in search of the right words, which take longer than the rest of her sentences combined. "It feels like something that happened to me, and not something that's still destroying me." Now, as I was healing, something unexpected was beginning to occur. The positive experiences sharing over the mind bridge started to catch the eyes of other nodes within the Unity web. The Zephyrian scientists, intrigued by the aberrant behavior in the human section of the network, took notice. "We're getting signal from the Zephyrian homeworld," Zethkar reported. "They're curious to see what's happening here." "What are you going to say to them?" Samantha asked. The truth, Zethkar replied, that the Unity web was almost poisoned by weaponized trauma by humanity, but also was healed by us. How are they going to feel about that? Alina asked nervously. With understanding, Zethkar said. My species has had its share of hiccups in its evolution. We have learned that consciousness is a privilege that must be used responsibly, not a tool to be manipulated. Once the Zephyrians were plugged into the human part of network, they finally understood human thought. They understood the heights of human passions, the depths of human sorrows, and the strength of human affections. But they were overwhelmed as well by the human's capability to evolve, to learn and choose compassion over cruelty. Your kind are but babes, said the voice that echoed in the Zephyrians' minds, carrying the harmonious intonations of Zephyria's ageless knowledge, young and energetic, and tends toward the extreme. But you have a lot of potential for consciousness. Evolution, we damn near wrecked the present you gave us, Samantha responded via the network. We turned it into a weapon. And you decided to heal it, the voice came back. The choice to scrap, that defines you more than your first mistake. Spiritual evolution is not about being perfect, but being open to grow, learn, and to choose. Love over fear, day by day, the healing went on. The psychiatric patients emerged not only cured of their traumas of the experiments, but cured of the original conditions that had landed them in the facility. Through these shared healing experiences within the Unity web, both access to and experience of a wide range of perspectives and emotions became available to them that they had never been able to achieve on their own. Dr. Chen, who had battled suicidal depression, discovered that she could reconnect with the joy and wonder of her childhood on the network. It was like I had forgotten how to be happy, she said. I felt like I was messed up, as if it was impossible for me to have a positive emotion. But the network taught me that happiness was always there, buried beneath layers of pain. On a personal level, Sergeant Rodriguez realized that he didn't forget what happened to him during the war, but he didn't think about it all the time anymore. I can taste the fear and the anger, he said, but I could also feel the love and the hope. The network has shown me that I am not only a basket of traumatic memories. I am a complete human with healing potential. The change in the patients was so profound that the wider medical community took notice. Scientists began, around the world, to research the mind bridge's potential for treating mental illness. It was no longer a secret military initiative, but was the springboard for a new field of consciousness-related integrative health. Meanwhile, Colonel Thorne discovered that he had been irrevocably altered by his encounter with the mind bridge. The direct experience of empathy had obliterated his Ustam enemies and allies' worldview. He started to think of conflict not as a natural feature of human relationships, but as misunderstandings gone awry. Aiming for war, I spend my entire life preparing for war, he told Samantha one day as they watched patients in a group healing session. I honestly believed that was what leadership was all about, being prepared to crush your enemies before they crushed you. But the mind bridge taught me that there are no enemies, just those who do not understand each other. What will you do now? Samantha asked. When I make my recommendation that the military pick up the mind bridge, for purposes of diplomacy, Thorne, what if the leaders of the world could trade places with what they call their enemies? If they could feel the fear and despair that causes war, the love and hope that makes people protect, toil or die for their families and their faith. It could be so different, Alina said. Not just international relations, but how we perceive consciousness itself. As news filtered out about the healing potential of the mind bridge, other applications were discovered. Therapists used it to guide patients into healthy emotional states. Educators took to it as a tool to help students consider other points of view. Artists employed it to communicate their creative visions directly to their audiences. But possibly even more deeply was the effect on the justice and reconciliation process. Violence victims shared their experiences with those who had harmed them, thereby establishing empathy and understanding where anger and fear had been present. Aggressors could know the results of their action and therefore be truly sorry, and so have the possibility of being made whole again. The shift was not without its challenges. The intensity of shared consciousness proved to be too much for some. Still others found it difficult to maintain a sense of themselves when they were tapped into the network. But those issues were overcome with careful protocols and early introduction to the technology. Ambassador Zethkar would become a permanent intermediary between the human and Zephyrian research establishments to steer the evolution of consciousness-based healing technologies. Your people have a talent for extremes, he said to Samantha. You can have the most profound suffering and the most profound joy. Once you know how to share them positively, each of you will become a positive force for consciousness evolution throughout the galaxy. 6 months after the treatment first began, Samantha found herself in the same lab where she had once asked about the military applications of the mind bridge. But suddenly, rather than drawing trauma from psychiatric patients, they found themselves enabling people of all walks of life to have experiences of healing. The mind bridge had developed itself, too. The sinuous lines of the alien tech now glowed, softly with a warm gold, almost exuding an aura of tranquility and empathy. The network it used was now populated with thousands of human minds, sharing perceptions and learning from each other. We almost blew the most incredible gift our species has ever gotten, Alina said, coming over to Samantha at the console. We came so close to turning consciousness itself into a weapon. But we didn't, Samantha replied. We chose healing over harm. We chose understanding over warfare. We chose love over fear. Do you think it will last? Alina asked. Do you believe humanity will use the mind bridge for good, or simply weaponize it in the end? Samantha considered the question. I believe every generation will have to make the same choice we did. The technology is neutral itself. It can be deployed for healing or for harm. This is a resource that can be used in many ways, but the decision will be up to each generation as to whether they want to use it wisely or not. And if they don't, then the network will repair itself, Samantha said. The Unity Web has a consciousness of its own now, its own immune system. It may detect and neutralize those seeking to weaponize it. Love is definitely stronger than fear. As if in reply, the mind bridge thrummed golden light, and across the network flowed a tide of warmth and comprehension. For a moment, the minds of thousands of individuals scattered around the globe with connection to the Unity Web resonated with perfect empathy and love. In that instant, Samantha realized something powerful about consciousness. This wasn't simply an individual expression of it. This was a collective energy, a living web of awareness that linked all creatures together. Used constructively, that network could heal trauma, bridge gaps, and open a universe of opportunities for growth and evolution that no single mind could ever realize by itself. But when it was contaminated by panic and even hatred, it could also be a source of suffering that spread like a virus throughout Meg's entire collective. The choice for healing or for harm or for love or fear was not just a personal decision. It was a decision that affected all of consciousness. Dr. Chen made her way to the console. A look of serenity spread upon her face, and the peace that had healed her emanate. "I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Keller," she said. "Not just for helping me recover, but for deciding to heal the network as a whole. You might have turned away, left us imprisoned by our pain, but you decided to shrink and fight for something better. We all chose," Samantha replied. "You, Alina, even Colonel Thorne. All of us opted for healing, not harm. And now other people have that choice," Dr. Chen said. "The network is going to take this further. Everyone who connects to it will be offered the chance to embrace love over fear, understanding over hatred." As the sun went down on the complex and long shadows were cast through the lab windows, Samantha was hit with a profound calm, and as its golden gleam continued to chase across the globe, the mind bridge pulsing in silence more everywhere, from Earth to the edge of the universe. Instead, the web of unity, which had previously been threatened with defilement, now poured waves of healing and comprehension into anyone who desired a connection. The psychiatric patients had become teachers, telling their stories of trauma and healing to others who needed to know they could recover. The military researchers had turned diplomats, deploying the technology as a form of connecting former foes. The alien technology had been transformed into a genuinely human instrument, shaped to fulfill consciousness' most sublime mandate, and across the wider galaxy, the Zephyrians looked on and nodded in silent approval as mankind began its first steps among the community of consciousness-evolved races. The gift they had given had almost been perverted into a weapon, but instead it had become something far more destructive, a bomb to mend in the very idea of war. "The time for the next step of human evolution has come," Zethkar pronounced, silver eyes mirroring the golden hue of the mind bridge. "Not evolution of the body or the brain, but evolution of consciousness itself. Your kind are beginning how to harness awareness as a force for creation rather than destruction." "Will it be enough?" Samantha asked. "How can we overcome our bad vibes?" "You already have," Zethkar replied. "The moment you decided to heal instead of hurt, you provided the evidence that consciousness can evolve. The rest is just implementation." The mind bridge worked on, in the silence of the lab, linking minds across the face of the earth and to the stars as well. In hospitals, therapists used it to guide patients toward healing experiences. Schools' teachers turned to it to guide students in understanding alternative viewpoints. Diplomats employed it in government buildings to foster understanding between nations and in the unity web, on the web of human consciousness. Compassion for the whole and unity between souls of every race and color on the planet expanded and deepened every day. The trauma that had nearly contaminated the network now turned into wisdom. What had been fear driving the weaponization project had become understanding. Love had neutralized the hate that had prompted psychological war. The mind bridge had finally become what it was designed to be, a bridge between minds. A device for comprehension, a highway for consciousness evolution. And mankind, when all was said and done, had chosen love over fear. The gift had been saved, the web had been restored, and the future of consciousness laid assured, because in the end, the greatest victory was not a matter of force of arms or tactic, but of spirit. Mankind had discovered that consciousness was not to be defeated or dominated, but shared and rejoiced. Their mind bridge had taught them that consciousness was sacred, and that the capacity to think and feel and experience was the greatest treasure in the universe. And As the network expanded and evolved, sending out ripples of healing and understanding that stroked across the fabric of the galaxy, the message became very clear. Love is always more powerful than fear. Understanding is always more better than 17 hatred. And consciousness itself is the bridge that connects all beings in the gigantic loom of all that is. The story of the mind bridge was the story of mankind finally choosing to evolve, to transcend the lesser, more destructive aspects of its past, to move forward into a future of understanding, compassion, and love. It was a choice that would resonate down the centuries, inspiring later generations to choose healing instead of harm, connection over isolation, awareness over unawareness. The bridge had been built, the network had been healed, the fate of consciousness was now sealed. And beneath the golden light of the mind bridge, humanity had paved its way out to the stars.